Hey everyone, today I wanted to talk about glass and adding images to your objects in Substance Painter. So let's start with glass. You see I have my windows on my car door here, and in order to add glass to your objects, it's pretty simple, but you do have to change a couple settings to kind of get going. The first thing you need to do is if you come over to your shader settings here, and then you have this ASM metal rough outdated, if you click that, and just change it to the updated ASM metal rough, and then scroll down to interior and click enable translucency. The last thing you need to do is then come up to your texture set settings, and I've already baked all of my mesh maps, so we don't have to worry about that. But under channels, I'm going to click this plus icon and then click translucency, and then I should be set to add glass. But you do want to make sure that you have the translucency enabled on the material you're working on. So just make sure you're not adding it to the wrong material. Okay, so I have it there. Now I'm going to go back to layers, and I'm just going to add a fill layer. And if I come back to my layer properties and then click my translucency, I can bring the translucency up and then click on my roughness channel and bring that down. I already have glass. And you can see that I have this kind of weird polygon effect on my glass here. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Sometimes when you import objects from Blender to Substance Painter, some of the settings you had in Blender don't translate. So I'm just going to ignore some of these polygons for now, and they should be fixed by the time I get back into Blender. But I have glass on my object, so I'm just going to add a little bit of complexity to my window here just to make it look a bit more realistic. So if I come over to my materials panel, and I'll add some sort of a rust effect to it. I know glass doesn't really get rust, but I kind of want it to simulate dirt or buildup of dirt on my glass. So I have this rust on my glass here, and if I add a black mask to that, and then look for a mask that should do the job, I'm going to pull in this moss mask and bring it here. I'll just kind of play with the settings to get it about where I want. I like it kind of how it's doing it here. I want it to mostly build up on the bottom of the glass to kind of simulate dust settling on this portion here. So I like that pretty well for now. And yeah, just like that, we got some glass in our scene, and we've added some complexity to make it look more realistic. Now let's jump over to the car door. So I'm going to start by just adding a couple of materials to the door. So I'll add like a metal texture here, and then let's add maybe like a plastic to these portions, and then let's texture that mirror just by adding a simple fill layer, and I'm just going to add like metal and roughness channel to it. That looks good. Then the metal, I'll do basically the same thing, but maybe have a little more roughness. There we go. So the last thing I want to do is I want to add kind of like an image that's like a sticker or a decal or body art to the side of my car here. And it's pretty simple to do that. And I'm going to go through kind of the most effective way to add images to your scene so that you can manipulate them with anchor points later. So what I'm going to do first is I have my car selected. I'm going to add a new fill layer. Then I'm going to drag my image into the base color of that fill layer. You can see there's some chaos happening here. So I'll scale this guy down and maybe rotate him about where I want. You can see first off it's kind of tiled in a weird way. I don't want that. So I'm going to come up under UV wrap, switch repeat to none, and that way I'll just have a single image in my scene. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an anchor point. And again, an anchor point, all it does is it references information from a layer so that you can use that information in a later layer. And so if I add a fill layer and add a black mask and then add a fill to that mask, I can reference this image here into this mask. So I'll come down to grayscale, and under anchor points, I'll click on the anchor point, and you can see it's kind of done something weird to my texture here. So what I'll do is I'll just scroll down, and under alpha behavior, I'll change keep alpha to extract alpha. So what that's doing is everywhere that this image was transparent, it's using that as a mask to cut out the image. But you might also ask, why did my image all of a sudden turn gray? And that's because we're masking a fill layer that's gray. So if we want to change that, we could just turn off the color channel of our fill layer, and then our image is going to come right back in. So you can see we have where our original image was, and we've completely cut out the transparency in the background. So now that we have the image in our scene, we're going to do a couple of things that make it look a little bit more realistic. Because you can see that our image is sitting perfectly on top of our car. It almost looks like it's been spray painted, but it's not different enough from the car to look believable. So since we've referenced our image into our mask, we can start by just changing parameters of this fill layer. So if I add a height channel and bring the height up, for instance, you can see that I get this lip on my image, and that will add a little difference to what I have here. I could also add a roughness channel and bring the roughness up or down. So that's looking a little bit more like it was added separately to the rest of the car. You can also, if you come back to the mask, we can add extra layers to this mask to cut out parts of this image. So if we add, for instance, a generator, maybe add a mask builder and change this normal mixing mode to multiply, you can see it kind of cuts out around where our image was. So I could bring the levels up. Let's see what's happening actually. I can bring the levels up. And you see we're confronted with another problem, because like if I mess with the levels here, it's changing like the height and the roughness and everything, but it's not changing where the color is. And that's because we have this original fill layer here, but that's not connected to this mask that we've created with it. So what we could do is we could come to our fill layer, turn the color channel back on, and under base color, if we come to anchor points and reference the anchor points of our original fill layer, then this fill layer will work on its own, and we can turn off the original fill layer and only work with this fill layer that we created. So if I come back to the mask, change levels and stuff, you can see now the color is being affected because I connected the anchor point to the base color of this fill layer up here. So I'm just going to kind of play around with this until I get what I'm looking for. You can always invert some of these things in order to reach in a way you weren't able to before. Kind of liking that. I don't want too much wear, but I like how just portions of it are gone. So yeah, we got that image texture in there, but we also have this glass texture up here. So there you have it, guys. We were able to add glass to our window and add some extra dirt elements to it. We were also able to get that image texture in there, add some grunge and separate channels to it in order to make it look more realistic. And now we have a pretty bespoke piece for our car texture. Hope that helps, guys. Excited to see what you come up with, and talk to you later. Bye.